He thought it was just a ride, until his father left him alone in the middle of nowhere. But the real danger isn't the night. It's what's coming next for him. Before we continue, let's know in the comment section what time it is, where you are viewing from, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Ryland Cole already knew something was wrong. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it in the silence of the apartment, the kind of silence that came right before a storm hit. Mason hadn't yelled that morning. He hadn't complained about Ryland's slow walking. He hadn't even looked at him. He just told him to get in the car. Ryland sat on the edge of his bed, the metal braces strapped to his legs digging into his skin. The oversized hoodie he wore hung off his shoulders like it belonged to someone else. He pulled the sleeves down over his bruises and tried to ignore the ache in his spine. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy, like it knew. Mason's voice echoed down the hallway. "Let's go." Ryland flinched, grabbed his worn backpack, and hurried after him. He didn't bother locking the apartment door. There was nothing in there he cared about. Nothing anyone could steal that hadn't already been taken from him a long time ago. The car ride was silent. Mason's eyes stayed glued to the road. His fingers tapped the steering wheel over and over, too fast, too nervous. Ryland hugged his backpack to his chest, every bump in the road sending a sharp sting through his legs. "Where are we going?" Ryland finally asked, his voice small. Mason didn't answer. He didn't even blink. They drove past the grocery store, past the old school Ryland barely attended anymore, past anything familiar. When the car slowed, they weren't in town. They weren't anywhere close. A small, lonely bus stop sat on the side of a rural road. A single flickering street lamp hummed above it. "Get out," Mason said. Ryland froze. "What?" Mason's jaw tightened. "I said get out." Ryland's heart hammered against his ribs. "But, where are we going?" Mason didn't look at him. "You'll wait here. Someone will come get you." That didn't make sense. None of this made sense. "Mason, please." "Get out, Ryland," Mason snapped, his voice cracking with something Ryland had never heard in it before. Not anger. Fear. Ryland's breath hitched. He opened the door slowly. The cold air hit him first, then the emptiness of the road. His braces clicked against the pavement as he stepped out. He turned back, clutching his backpack. "Are you coming back?" Mason's eyes flicked toward him, just once. And then he said the last words Ryland would ever hear from him. "You'll be fine." The car door slammed shut. The engine roared. And Mason Cole sped away without looking back. Ryland stumbled after the car, but his legs couldn't carry him far. He tried calling out, but the wind swallowed his voice. Within seconds, the red taillights disappeared into the darkness. Gone. Just like that. Ryland stood there shaking, the cold biting through his hoodie. The street lamp flickered above him, buzzing like it was struggling to stay alive. He sat down on the bench, hugging his backpack so tightly the straps dug into his arms. His breath came out in shaky gasps. The road was quiet. Too quiet. No cars. No houses. No people. Just him. Just the boy nobody wanted. Minutes passed. Then hours. And the night only grew colder. Somewhere around midnight, Ryland's eyes grew heavy. He kept jerking awake, terrified he'd missed the sound of Mason's car returning. But Mason didn't come back. He never would. When Ryland opened his eyes again, he wasn't alone. A pair of headlights approached slowly, too slowly. Ryland held his breath, hope rising, until he realized the car was older, shaped differently. Unfamiliar. It pulled over. The driver stepped out. A tall, older white man with gray hair and a soft, tired expression walked toward him, his hands raised in a non-threatening way. "You all right there?" the man asked gently. "It's freezing out." "What are you doing here, all alone?" Ryland swallowed hard. His voice didn't want to come out. I'm waiting," he whispered. "My dad said he'd come back." The man's face tightened with concern. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ryland," he said. "Ryland Cole." The man inhaled sharply. Just for a second. Then he forced a smile that didn't match the sudden fear in his eyes. "Well, Ryland," he said softly, Let's get you somewhere warm. Rylan hesitated. He had been taught not to trust strangers. But the night was too cold, his body too tired, and Elias, the man he would later know as Elias Grant, looked at him, not with annoyance, not with disgust, but with something Rylan had never seen directed at him before. Worry. Real worry. Rylan nodded. Elias lifted him gently to his feet, careful of his braces, and guided him toward the car. And for the first time in a very long time, Rylan didn't feel completely invisible. As he settled into the passenger seat, Elias quietly whispered to himself, too quietly for Rylan to hear. Cole, why does that name sound familiar? He gripped the steering wheel tightly. The headlights cut through the darkness as the two drove away from the deserted bus stop. But even as they left, something unseen moved in the shadows behind the bench. A small, folded paper Mason had dropped by accident. A paper with a hospital logo. A name. A date. A secret. And the wind lifted it gently, sliding it closer to the road, waiting for someone to find it. As Elias's car disappeared down the lonely road with Rylan curled silently on the back seat, the forgotten paper finally loosened from the bench and drifted into the darkness, its secret still unread and still waiting. Rylan woke to warmth. Softness. Silence. For a moment, he didn't move. He didn't breathe. Part of him thought the darkness and the drifting paper had been a dream. Part of him thought he was still on the cold bench, shivering under the flickering street lamp. But no, this was different. The mattress beneath him didn't creak. The blanket didn't scratch his skin. And the air smelled like lavender and clean laundry. Not mold and cigarette smoke. He blinked awake. The ceiling above him wasn't cracked plaster. It was smooth, clean. And hanging from it was a chandelier. A real chandelier. Rylan shot upright, pain burning up his spine like fire. He sucked in a breath, gripping the blanket as panic flooded his mind. Where was he? What happened? Why wasn't he at the bus stop anymore? Then everything rushed back at once. The car. Mason leaving. The cold night. The man named Elias. Rylan pressed a hand to his forehead. It was too much, too strange, too good to be true. People like him didn't wake up in rooms like this. He slid his legs off the bed, the familiar clink of his braces grounding him. Someone had removed his shoes. Someone had tucked him in. Someone had cared enough to make sure he was warm. That alone felt foreign. The room was bigger than the entire apartment he used to live in. Blue walls, a desk near a wide window, a shelf full of books that didn't have broken spines or missing pages. A rug so soft, his foot sank into it like a cloud. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. His backpack sat on a chair. Next to it, a tray with a glass of water and a covered plate. His stomach growled loudly, embarrassing him, even though no one else was there. He limped over and lifted the silver dome. Pancakes. Scrambled eggs. Toast. A full breakfast. A real breakfast. The sight nearly made him dizzy. Rylan picked up the fork. His hands trembled so hard he almost dropped it. He took a bite, and the taste hit him like a punch to the chest. Warm, soft and sweet. His throat tightened. He swallowed quickly, blinking fast. Crying over pancakes was stupid. Ridiculous. But he couldn't help it. Downstairs, Elias sat alone in his office, sleep-deprived and unsettled. His phone lay on the table in front of him, a blank screen glowing faintly. He had called the police. He had done what any responsible adult should do. But his instincts, they were screaming at him. There was something about the boy, something he couldn't explain. The limp, the braces, the way he winced when he moved, like pain was as familiar to him as breath. Elias had seen it all before. 15 years ago. His gaze drifted toward the desk drawer. His fingers hovered over the handle, hesitating, before he finally pulled it open. Inside was a faded photograph. A tiny baby, swaddled in hospital blankets, tubing and wires attached to a fragile spine. A baby born with a rare deformity. A baby who doctors weren't sure would ever stand. A baby Elias had held once, just once, before flames swallowed an entire hospital wing. Before they told him his son was gone. Elias clenched his jaw, his throat tight. No, he whispered to himself. It's impossible. but the doubt in his voice betrayed him. He looked toward the stairs, toward the room where Rylan was waking up. The image of the boy's eyes flashed in his mind. Hazel, bright, familiar, too familiar. A soft knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. "Come in," Elias called quickly, shoving the photograph back into the drawer. The door creaked open. Rylan stood there, backpack clutched to his chest like a shield, sleeve pulled over his bruised wrist. "I'm sorry," he whispered immediately. Elias's heart cracked. This boy apologized for breathing. "You're not bothering me," he said gently, standing. "How did you sleep?" Rylan forced a tiny smile. "Better than I usually do." Elias nodded, but his chest tightened again. "I'm glad." An awkward silence stretched between them. Rylan shifted nervously, hugging the backpack tighter. "I just wanted to say thank you," he mumbled. "For the bed. And the food. And everything." And Elias swallowed. It shouldn't have hurt as much as it did to hear that. "You're welcome, Rylan. Truly." Rylan hesitated. Then quietly, like the question itself might get him in trouble. Do you think my dad will come back for me?" Rylan asked. Elias's breath caught. He wanted to lie for the boy's sake. But lies had already ruined this child's life. "I don't know," Elias said honestly, "but I do know you are safe here, for as long as you need to be." Rylan blinked fast, fighting tears. "Why are you being nice to me?" The question hit Elias like a strike to the chest. Because children shouldn't have to ask that. Because no one had been kind to this boy in a long time. He knelt so their eyes met. Because every child deserves to be cared for, Rylan. The boy stared at him, studying his face carefully, like he was trying to decide if Elias meant it. And slowly, Rylan nodded. That afternoon, Elias made a decision. He called Detective Sarah Mills. "Mr. Elias Grant," she greeted. "We've looked into your report. Unfortunately, Mason Cole hasn't been located. No relatives, no employment record, no friends. It's like he disappeared." Elias felt a chill run through him. "What about the boy? What happens now?" Elias asked. "We will need to contact Child Protective Services," Mills said. "They will arrange foster care until—" "Nah." Elias cut Mills off before she could even get the word out. "Mr. Grant?" Mill called on the phone. "I want temporary guardianship," Elias said. A long silence followed. "Elias, that is a serious responsibility. Potentially long-term." Mills broke the silence. His eyes drifted up the staircase, where soft footsteps moved across the floor. "I know what I'm asking," he said quietly. "All right, I'll start the paperwork," Mills said, hanging up the call. Hours later, the house felt different. Lighter. Warmer. Alive. Rylan sat curled on the couch, sketchbook open in his lap. His pencil moved slowly, carefully, drawing a house with glowing windows and a boy standing out front. A smiling boy. Elias watched from across the room, his chest aching. "That's beautiful." Rylan snapped the notebook shut immediately. "It's nothing. It's not nothing," Elias said softly. "You're talented. No one's ever said that before." Rylan smiled. "Then no one's been paying attention," Elias said. Rylan stared at him, stunned, as if the words didn't even feel real. And for the first time in years, the boy smiled, really smiled. That night, after Rylan had fallen asleep, Elias returned to his office. The house was quiet. Too quiet for the storm inside him. He opened his laptop and began searching. Hospital fire, infant deaths, spinal deformity. 15 years ago. Page after page. Article after article. Until something made his breath stop. A security photo. Smoke. Screaming figures running. A nurse holding a baby as she fled the burning building. The image was grainy, black and white, but one detail stood out. The nurse's name tag. Marilyn Cole. Elias's heart slammed against his ribs. Cole. The same last name as the man who abandoned Rylan. His hands trembled as the truth clawed at him. What if his son hadn't died? What if someone had taken him? What if that person was connected to Mason Cole? He grabbed his phone. "Detective Mills," he said the moment she answered. I need you to run a background check, Mason Cole. I need to know if he had a sister named Marilyn. Mr. Elias Grant, it's almost midnight, Mills said. Please, Elias said, his voice cracking. This is urgent. I'll call you in the morning, Mills agreed. Elias ended the call, staring at the photo as dread and hope twisted violently inside him. Upstairs, Rylan lay staring at the ceiling, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. He lay still, trying to steady his breathing. The room was too calm, too clean, too quiet. It felt wrong. Safe, but wrong. He pushed the blanket off and slowly swung his legs over the edge of the bed, the metal braces clicking faintly. His backpack sat on a nearby chair, scratched, frayed, and soaked at the bottom from last night's cold ground. Something about it felt heavier than he remembered. He frowned. He reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the fabric, he heard it, a soft crinkle from inside. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small, brittle sound that shouldn't have been there. Then, carefully, he unzipped the bag. Inside, wedged between his spare shirt and the old notebook Mason never let him write in, was a folded document. Yellowed around the edges, water-stained. The paper looked like it had been hidden inside the lining for years. He didn't remember packing it. He didn't even know it existed. His stomach tightened. Rylan pulled the paper out, his hands trembling as the folds cracked open. A hospital document. Old. Rough. Creased. Official. His eyes landed on the first line. It read, Patient name, infant grandfather, Elias Grant. Condition, congenital spinal deformity. Date of birth, 15 years ago. Rylan's hands shook violently. His vision blurred. His breath hitched. He read the name again. Elias Grant. The man downstairs. The man who rescued him. The man who said he wanted to keep him safe. The man on the birth document. Listed as his father. Rylan dropped the paper in shock, a silent gasp escaping him as his world tilted. Because if this was real, everything he knew about his life was a lie. But if that was true, why did Mason have this paper? Why hide it? Why now? Rylan didn't sleep. He couldn't. The hospital document lay on the bed in front of him, its edges soft from age, its ink faded but still sharp enough to slice straight through his chest. Every time he blinked, he saw the same words burning into his mind. Patient name. Infant Grant. Father. Elias Grant. He touched the creases again, as if the paper might vanish if he let go long enough. His dad. No. Mason had kept this hidden. All these years. All those nights Rylan had asked where he came from, and Mason had snapped at him, and told him to stop asking stupid questions. Now he understood why. Footsteps creaked downstairs. Elias. Rylan's throat tightened. He didn't know what terrified him more. The possibility the paper was real, or the possibility it wasn't. He shoved the document back into the backpack. Not out of fear, Elias would take it, but because he wasn't ready to look at him, not after reading that name. He couldn't. Not yet. He stayed awake the whole night, his eyes wide open, clutching the strap of his backpack like it was a lifeline and a bomb at the same time. Downstairs. Elias hadn't slept either. He sat at his desk, his elbows on the table with his head buried in his hands. Every instinct in him screamed. It couldn't be true. It shouldn't be possible. But what if? His phone buzzed at exactly 6:14 a.m. Detective Sarah Mills. He snatched it up before the first ring even finished. Tell me you found something, Elias said. I did, Mills answered, her voice too calm to be good news. Elias. Mason Cole isn't who he claimed to be. Elias went cold. Meaning? Mason's real name is Mason Dre. He changed it 12 years ago. Before that, he was under investigation for 2 separate child endangerment cases, both mysteriously dropped. Elias swallowed hard. And Marilyn Cole? He asked. There was silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. Then Mills spoke. Mason's birth records link him to one sibling, a sister. Marilyn Dre, who later changed her name to Marilyn Cole after a hospital fire 15 years ago. Elias's pulse thundered. A hospital fire. The same fire that took his son. Mills, Elias whispered. Did she work at? Yes. Mills cut in gently. She worked in the neonatal wing. Elias. She was on duty the night of the fire. The room tilted. His hands shook against the phone. Where is she now? He asked, his voice barely holding. She died 13 years ago. Mills exhaled. Car accident. No survivors. Elias felt his stomach drop. Dead. The only person who could tell him the truth is gone. What about Mason? Elias asked. That's the part you are not going to like, Mills said. He disappeared last night, before we could pick him up. Elias's blood ran cold. Elias, Mills continued softly, we might be dealing with something bigger than abandonment. He closed his eyes. He already knew that. He had felt it the moment he saw the boy's eyes. Hazel. Soft. Familiar. So what do I do? He asked, his voice shaking for the first time. Keep the boy close, Mills said. And whatever you do, don't let him out of your sight. The line went dead. But the warning didn't. Upstairs, Rylan waited until the house felt awake. He heard the kettle, the clink of a mug, the low creak of stairs shifting beneath careful footsteps. He didn't know how to face Elias. He didn't know how to ask him why his name was on that paper. He didn't know if he should ask. A soft knock broke through his panic. Rylan. Elias's voice was gentle. Too gentle. Breakfast is ready. Rylan froze. His fingers curled around the hidden document inside his bag. I will be down in a minute, he called back. There was a pause. Then Elias answered, take your time. Rylan closed his eyes. His chest tightened. That was the problem. Elias always sounded like he meant it. And for the first time in his life, Rylan wished he could trust that. Downstairs at the breakfast table. When Rylan finally came down, Elias looked up immediately. He tried to hide the worry behind a soft smile, but Rylan saw it. He felt it. You all right? Elias asked. Rylan nodded. Too quickly. Yeah, just tired. Elias didn't push. He didn't pry. He simply slid a plate toward him. Eat. Rylan picked up the fork, but his appetite had vanished. He glanced at Elias, then back to his bag. Then, at Elias again. The question burned at the back of his throat. Are you my father? But the words wouldn't come out. Elias watched him carefully, noticing every tremble. Rylan, you can tell me anything, Elias said. Rylan's breath caught. But before either of them could speak, a sharp rap, 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 hit the front door. Both of them jumped. Elias stiffened instantly. That wasn't a neighbor. That wasn't a delivery. Those knocks were too hard, too fast, and too desperate. Stay here, Elias whispered. He walked to the door slowly, his shoulders tense. Rylan slid off the chair, his heart pounding, inching closer. Elias unlocked the door. And the moment it cracked open, a hand shoved it wide. Elias stumbled back. A man stepped into the light. Cold eyes, unshaven face, clothes wrinkled, damp from the night. Mason. Rylan's entire body froze. No breath. No sound. Nothing. Mason's gaze locked onto him instantly. There you are, Mason rasped. You have something that belongs to me. Elias stepped between them immediately, fury flashing across his face. You are not taking him anywhere, Elias growled. Mason smirked, a twisted, ugly thing. Oh, I am not here for him, Mason said, his eyes narrowing. I am here for the paper. Rylan's stomach lurched. He clutched the bag closer without meaning to. Mason's eyes darted to the movement, and a sick smile curled on his lips. There it is, Mason whispered. Hand it over, kid. Now. Rylan's knees trembled. Elias positioned himself like a shield, his voice low and dangerous. You step 1 inch closer, he warned, and you won't walk out of this house. Mason laughed. Like he wasn't afraid. Like he had nothing to lose. Like he had done this before. You think you know what that paper means, Mason said, but you don't. Elias didn't move. Mason leaned in slightly, his eyes cold. You have no idea what you're protecting. Rylan clutched his bag tighter, breath shaking. Mason saw it, and his expression shifted. From anger, to desperation, to pure panic. Give me the document, Mason hissed. Before they find out I lost it. Elias froze. They? Rylan's heart thudded so hard it hurt. Who are they? Elias said quietly. But Mason didn't answer. He just lunged straight toward Rylan. Elias grabbed him mid-move. Then they both crashed into the dining table. Dishes shattered. Rylan screamed. The crash shook the entire dining room. Glass shattered across the floor. Elias slammed Mason into the edge of the table, but Mason didn't care. He kept clawing, grabbing, reaching. Not for Elias. Not even for Rylan. For the bag. For the document. Rylan stumbled back, his legs shaking as the metal braces clicked beneath him. His hands tightened around the strap of the backpack until his knuckles went white. Run, Elias shouted, voice raw with panic. He didn't have to say it twice. Rylan bolted. Or tried to. His legs weren't made for running. They moved stiff, uneven, slow. The braces dragged against the wooden floor with a metallic scrape, and pain shot through his hips as he pushed himself toward the living room. Behind him, a body slammed into the wall. A grunt. A thud. Mason was fighting like a man terrified of losing something far more important than a child. Get off me, Mason snarled. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand enough, Elias spat, shoving him back. Rylan reached the hallway just as Mason broke free for a single second, long enough to lunge again. Rylan, move. Elias tackled him before he could reach the boy. They crashed into the ground, hard. Rylan froze, caught between fear and the instinct to help and the instinct to flee. His breath came quickly, sharp and painful. His legs trembled violently beneath him. Elias grunted, fighting for leverage. Mason elbowed him in the ribs. The air shot from Elias's lungs with a choked gasp. Give me the damn paper, Mason roared. No, Elias barked. Rylan's hand shook as he grabbed the closest thing he could, a lamp. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He just acted. He swung. The lamp crashed across Mason's back. Mason cried out, collapsing forward for half a second. Elias seized the moment. He shoved Mason down, pinning him to the floor with all his weight. Rylan, Elias wheezed, breathless. Go upstairs. Lock yourself in the room. Now. Rylan's chest heaved. But. Go. Rylan ran, or whatever his version of running was, up the stairs, gripping the railing so tight his fingers hurt. His braces clanged against each step. Every sound echoed through the house like gunshots. The moment he reached the top, he heard it. A door cracking open downstairs. A body shifting. A desperate, broken voice. Rylan. Mason was still moving, and still coming. Rylan scrambled into his room, slammed the door shut, and twisted the lock with shaking hands. Then he backed away, his heart hammering so hard, his ribs hurt. Footsteps thundered downstairs. A crash. A grunt of pain. A table overturning. The house shook with the fear below. Rylan pressed a hand over his mouth, trying not to sob, trying not to breathe loud enough for anyone to hear. His backpack lay at his feet. The document inside felt radioactive. Dangerous. A secret someone had killed for once, and was willing to kill for again. He sank onto the bed, clutching the bag to his chest, rocking slightly as he tried to calm the storm inside him. He couldn't. He didn't know how. Not when the only question that mattered kept spinning through his mind like a knife. Why did Mason risk everything to hide this paper? Who were the people he was terrified of? And if Elias's name was on that document, then what did that make Rylan? A scream tore through the house. Elias's voice. Rylan's blood froze. He shot upright, his eyes wide, backpack forgotten as terror ripped through him. Elias? No answer. Just the deep, shaking silence of a house holding its breath. Ryland's heart slammed against his ribs. He crawled toward the door, slowly and quietly. He pressed his ear to the wood. Nothing. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Not voices. Just a creak. A slow, heavy, dragging creak coming up the stairs. One step, then another, then another. Ryland's throat closed. His hand flew to the lock, but he didn't dare touch it. He couldn't even breathe. The creaking stopped right outside his door. Then knuckles tapped the wood. Once, twice, 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. Wrong. Ryland. A hoarse voice whispered through the crack beneath the door. Open up. Open up. Open up. It wasn't Elias. It wasn't kind. It wasn't safe. It was cold. Sharp. Unstable. Mason. Kid, Mason breathed. If you don't open this door right now, I swear, I will break it. Ryland clamped both hands over his mouth to stop himself from crying out. His braces vibrated from how hard he was trembling. I know you have it, Mason whispered. I know you saw it. But you don't understand what it means. You don't understand what they will do to me if I come back empty-handed. Ryland squeezed his eyes shut. A tear slid down his cheek. His heart broke and bled in silence. Then, a new sound interrupted Mason's rambling. The unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. Mason's voice cracked. No, wait, Elias, don't. A single gunshot exploded through the house. The walls shook. The floor trembled. A framed photo crashed from the hallway wall. Ryland screamed, and he couldn't stop himself. He curled on the floor, his hands clamped over his ears, shaking violently as the echo of the shot rolled through the house like thunder. The hallway fell silent, completely silent. Then, a soft voice, shaky, exhausted, alive. Ryland, it's safe now. Elias. Ryland sobbed with relief. But something in Elias's voice didn't sound safe at all. Something in it sounded ruined, broken, and terrified of what comes next. For a moment, Ryland didn't move. His body stayed folded on the bedroom floor, arms wrapped around his head, knees tucked to his chest. The silence after the gunshot felt heavier than the sound itself, like the whole house was holding its breath, waiting to see what was left standing. The doorknob clicked. Ryland? Elias's voice was low, strained. It's me. You can open the door now. Ryland didn't open it. He couldn't. His fingers were locked around his knees, and it took every ounce of strength just to whisper back. Are you okay? The pause was too long. Then, I'm fine, Elias said, but his voice cracked in the middle of the word fine. Ryland crawled toward the door and hesitated, hand trembling as he unlocked it. The second it opened, Elias dropped to one knee and pulled the boy into his arms. Ryland didn't fight it. He collapsed into the embrace, like someone who hadn't been held in years, and maybe he hadn't. His forehead pressed against Elias's shoulder, and the man's arms tightened around him, grounding him, steadying him, shaking just as hard as Ryland was. It's over, Elias whispered. He can't hurt you anymore. Ryland pulled back enough to look up at him. Elias's face was pale. Too pale. His eyes were red, grief, fear, and something else. Guilt. Is he? Ryland asked, voice barely a breath. Elias swallowed hard. He's alive, he said. Barely, but alive. Ryland blinked. You didn't? No. Elias shook his head. I fired to stop him, not to kill him. Ryland nodded, but his body still trembled uncontrollably. Come on, Elias said gently. Let's get you downstairs. You need to sit. You're shaking. But when they reached the bottom of the stairs, Ryland froze. Mason lay on the floor, not dead, but bleeding heavily, a gunshot wound tearing through his shoulder. The gun shook in his hand as he clutched his arm, teeth gritted in an agonized snarl. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Elias had already called them. But Mason wasn't looking at his wound. He wasn't looking at Elias. He was looking at Ryland. straight at him, with a mixture of rage, fear, and something Rylan didn't recognize until it hit him. Desperation. "You don't get it, kid," Mason rasped. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." Elias stepped protectively in front of Rylan. "Don't," he warned. But Mason ignored him, his eyes locked onto the boy. "You're not supposed to exist," he whispered. Rylan felt his heart stop. "What?" he breathed. "You were supposed to die in that fire," Mason said, face tightening in pain. "They made sure of it. They burned the whole damn place to erase you." Elias stiffened. "Mason," he warned, "shut your mouth." But Mason wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the boy like he was looking at a ghost. "You think I wanted this?" Mason spat. "You think I wanted to raise a kid that wasn't mine? A kid they were hunting? They were going to kill me too if they found out I kept you alive." Rylan felt his knees buckle. Elias caught him before he fell. "Who?" Elias demanded. "Who wanted him dead? Who burned the hospital?" Mason laughed, a broken, shaky sound. "You already know who." Then the sirens cut off outside. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Boots pounded up the driveway. Mason's breathing grew ragged, panicked. "Elias," he whispered suddenly, almost pleading, "you don't understand the people behind this. They're not going to stop now. They're not going to let this go." Elias's jaw tightened. "What do they want?" Mason's eyes flicked to Rylan one last time. "Him." Police stormed through the door, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them." Elias raised his hands, calm but protective. Mason didn't move. He just stared at Rylan, trembling. "They're coming for you," he whispered. Then the officers swarmed him, pulling the gun away, pinning him, cuffing him, dragging him out the door as he thrashed weakly against the cold floor. Elias exhaled shakily and knelt before Rylan again. But Rylan wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the front door, at the place Mason had disappeared through, at the echo of his final words ringing in his skull. "They're coming for you." The room felt colder. His skin prickled. His heartbeat spiked. Because for the first time since waking up in this house, Rylan understood something. The danger wasn't Mason. The danger wasn't the fire. The danger wasn't even the secret in the document. It was who the secret belonged to. And they were coming. The next morning came like a punishment. Rylan hadn't slept. Not really. Every groan of the house, every whisper of the wind, had him bolting upright with wide, terrified eyes. It felt like the walls were breathing around him, like someone, something, was watching from just out of sight. Elias never left the room. He paced relentlessly, phone in hand, calling officers, updating Detective Mills, snapping at anyone who seemed too slow or too unsure. His movements were sharp, frantic, controlled on the surface, but barely, because he felt it too. Something bigger than Mason was coming. Something that wasn't supposed to know Rylan existed, but clearly did. By mid-afternoon, the house had settled into a tense silence. Too still, too quiet. Then, click. The mail slot nudged open with a soft metallic tap, a tiny sound, harmless, ordinary. But at that moment, it might as well have been a gunshot. Rylan flinched hard, chest tightening. Elias immediately reached for his holster and moved toward the door with slow, predatory precision. He expected a flyer, a bill, a mistake. But lying on the floor was a thick envelope, no name, no stamp, no handwriting. Just a plain, heavy, terrifying message. "They know where you live." Elias didn't bring it inside. He carried it like a live explosive. His hands steady, but jaw clenched so tightly the muscle twitched. "Sir," Rylan whispered. "Don't." But it was too late. Elias slit the envelope open carefully. 3 things dropped onto the table. A photograph. A melted, blackened hospital ID badge. A folded note. Rylan's entire body locked. The photo was of him. Not now. Not as a small, trembling boy. But as an infant. Barely alive, hooked to tubes, covered in bruises. lying in an incubator that looked like it belonged in a war zone. Ryland's breath shattered. Where did they get this? Why did they have this? Elias unfolded the note. His voice shook for the first time when he read it. That boy was never meant to survive. We are correcting that mistake. Ryland's knees nearly gave out. They know who I am, he choked. They have been watching me, sir. They have been watching me since. I know, Elias said quietly. Deadly. Which means this isn't random. Someone wants you erased, Ryland. Someone who has been waiting. The badge caught Elias's eye. The plastic was burned, warped, almost melted down to the numbers. A hospital badge. From 15 years ago. The same hospital that burned down. The same hospital that took Ryland's identity. The same hospital that erased his past. That was no coincidence. Elias picked it up and closed his eyes, connecting dots that terrified him. We are not dealing with Mason anymore, he said. This is bigger, organized, protected. Ryland swallowed hard. By who? Who wants me dead? Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because the fear in his eyes said everything. Whoever they weren't done. And they weren't afraid. Detective Mills arrived within 20 minutes. And for the first time, even she didn't hide her alarm. The badge was scanned. The ink was analyzed. The envelope was checked for prints. Every clue pointed to the same buried, erased, forbidden name. Project Cinder. A program that existed only in whispers, one rumored to correct, erase, and manage inconvenient newborn cases. Children marked as liabilities to powerful families. Children who were never supposed to live long enough to ask questions. Children like Ryland. Night after night, Elias and Ryland sat together in the dimly lit living room, facing a growing wall of documents, photos, hospital records, and timelines. Red strings webbed across the wall like a spider's trap. They want me dead because I survived, Ryland whispered. Elias didn't argue. Instead, he said the one thing that kept Ryland from falling apart. But you are not alone anymore. Elias stared at the request for a long time, conflicted. Mason is terrified, Elias said quietly. More terrified of them than he ever was of dying. Which means he knows something. Ryland's stomach nodded. What if he betrays us? He might, Elias admitted. But he is our only living link to whoever is hunting you. The fear around them no longer felt passive. It was moving, tightening, closing in. Weeks later, after several investigations, when the tension was at its peak, they finally found her, the missing nurse. She appeared like a ghost, skittish, ashen. Her hands trembled as she spoke. She confirmed everything. Project Cinder, the fire, the erasure of infant records, the political protection. And then she said the one thing that changed the entire investigation. You were meant to die in that hospital, she whispered. But someone saved you. Someone on the inside. Someone powerful. Ryland felt his heart stop. Who? The nurse's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the darkness. You will know when they show themselves, she whispered, because they have been watching every move you make. Ryland couldn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because something fierce had awakened inside him. He wasn't going to run. Not anymore. He was done being prey. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice low and steady. This is the final stretch. Whoever is behind this, we are bringing them down. And for the first time, Ryland believed him, because the truth was no longer hiding in the shadows. It was walking toward him, step by step, and when it arrived, everything would burn. The next 48 hours unfolded like the tightening of a noose. With the nurse's confession, Elias, Ryland, and Detective Mills finally had enough information to expose Project Cinder. In theory, but knowing the truth and surviving long enough to use it were two different things entirely. Ryland felt the tension long before danger arrived. It clung to the house like humidity, thick and suffocating. Elias barely slept. Detective Mills kept officers cycling around the property. Still, Something felt wrong. Too quiet, too expectant. And Ryland's instincts turned out to be right. Just after midnight, power died across the neighborhood. Lights. Security cameras. Phone signals. Everything went dark. Detective Mills cursed and reached for her radio. Static. Only static. Ryland's heart hammered against his ribs. "They are here," he whispered. Elias grabbed his shoulders, steady and controlled despite the chaos. "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, you do not get separated." But as they moved toward the back exit, the front door exploded inward. Black-clad operatives flooded the house, silent, masked, disciplined, not thugs, not kidnappers, not criminals. This was a coordinated strike. Project Cinder had finally come to claim their so-called missing mistake. Elias shoved Ryland toward Detective Mills. "Go. Use the side corridor." "I am not leaving you," Ryland protested. "You will die if you stay." Elias shouted back, his voice cracking with fear he could no longer hide. Gunfire erupted, deafening and brutal. Detective Mills returned fire, dragging Ryland toward the pantry door that led into the basement. Behind them, Elias was fighting, no, protecting, with terrifying ferocity. Ryland had never realized how deadly he could be when pushed. But even Elias couldn't hold off trained assassins forever. Ryland stumbled down the stairs, tears blurring his vision. He hated himself for running, hated the fear, hated that he was once again helpless while people risked their lives for him. At the bottom step, he froze. Someone was already waiting in the basement. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped forward, illuminated by the faint emergency glow of a battery lamp. His hair was silver at the temples, and he carried himself with unnerving calm, like someone who had predicted this moment down to the second. "Hello, Ryland," he said softly. Ryland's blood turned to ice. "You," Ryland breathed. "You are the one behind all this. You run Project Cinder." The man's lips curved into a slow smile. "My name," he said, "is Adrian Ward." The name struck Ryland like a blow. Elias had mentioned it before, an investor, a shadow in medical records, someone with influence in the hospital where Ryland was born. Ward watched him carefully, like a specimen under glass. "It's strange," Adrian Ward mused, "seeing you alive after all these years. You were never meant to survive that night, but here you are, persistent, inconvenient." He shrugged, "and in a twisted way, impressive." Ryland's voice shook with rage. "You killed those babies. You burned the hospital. You tried to kill me." "No," Adrian Ward said calmly. "I tried to maintain order. Some children should not be born. Some carry conditions, complications, risks that will destroy everything their parents built." Ryland's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" Adrian Ward stepped closer. "I knew your father." Ryland's breath caught. "He was involved with us," Adrian Ward continued. "Deeply. He funded programs, approved procedures, and signed documents. He believed in our mission, until your birth." Ryland's heart pounded so hard it hurt. "My father wouldn't." "He would, and he did," Adrian responded softly. Adrian Ward's eyes sharpened. "When he realized you weren't the son he expected, medically fragile, dependent, costing millions to keep alive, he panicked. He tried to protect you, tried to undo the paperwork, hide you, get you out." Ryland's legs trembled. "So he wasn't abandoning me," he whispered. "He was trying to save me." Adrian Ward tilted his head. "He failed, but he tried." The truth hit Ryland so hard he almost collapsed. The memories, the ride, the abandonment, the fear. They all twisted into something new, agonizing, and devastating. Adrian Ward watched the pain on Ryland's face with unsettling fascination. "You weren't supposed to grow into anything dangerous," Adrian Ward said. "Yet here we are. You have survived long enough to threaten everything we built. Now I must correct the oversight." He raised a tranquilizer pistol, and before Ryland could run, bang! Adrian Ward jerked in pain, stumbling as a bullet tore through his shoulder. Elias stood in the doorway, bloodied, bruised, his breathing hard. "You want him," Elias growled. "You go through me." What followed was chaos. Adrian Ward, though wounded, gave orders through a tiny earpiece. More operatives descended into the basement. Elias fought with desperate strength, but they were too many. Detective Mills joined the fray, firing from the stairs. 2 agents fell, then 3, but Adrian Ward kept advancing, unfazed by pain. "Take the boy," he commanded. Ryland scrambled back, knocking over shelves, searching for anything he could use as a weapon. His hand landed on an old metal pipe. Elias was hit. He fell. Elias. Ryland lunged instinctively, not with fear, but with something fierce, raw, and primal. He swung the pipe with all the strength in his small frame. It connected with Adrian Ward's jaw. The man staggered, stunned. Another blow. And another. Ryland screamed with every swing, years of confusion, terror, and loss pouring out of him. Adrian Ward collapsed to his knees. And for the first time, he looked afraid. "You are stronger than he was," Adrian Ward choked, clutching his jaw. "Your father." He couldn't finish what he started. Ryland glared at him, shaking. "I'm not my father." "No," Adrian Ward agreed. "You are worse. You are unpredictable." Elias, despite bleeding heavily, grabbed Ryland's wrist. "Don't," he gasped. "If you kill him, they will twist the story, make you the villain. Ryland, don't become what they want." Ryland's grip loosened. Sirens wailed above. Reinforcements, real ones this time. Detective Mills had managed to call for backup through a secondary channel. Adrian Ward's agents fled. Adrian Ward himself was handcuffed, dragged upstairs, still smiling faintly, whispering, "This isn't over." Project Cinder had been exposed. Adrian Ward and several high-ranking members faced trial. Former employees came forward. Whistleblowers emerged. Hidden victims were identified and given justice. Ryland became the symbol of survival, silent, private, unwilling to be paraded around, but undeniably a living witness of what the organization tried to erase. Elias recovered slowly. His bond with Ryland deepened into something unbreakable. Not father and son, but something equally more powerful. A promise, a choice, a commitment built from survival and shared scars. One evening, Ryland stood on a quiet hill overlooking the city lights. Elias joined him, hands in his pockets. "You still think it isn't over?" Ryland asked softly. Elias took a breath. "I think Adrian Ward was only one head of a larger beast," he admitted. "But we cut deep. Deep enough to make them bleed." Ryland nodded. "I am not running anymore," he said. "Not from them, not from my past. They tried to erase me, but I am still here." Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "And you are not alone." Ryland looked at the horizon, a quiet fire in his eyes. He had been hunted, he had been marked, he had been feared. But now, he was alive, unbroken, and dangerous in a way Project Cinder never predicted. The story ended not with peace, but with strength, with survival, with the promise of a boy who refused to die and refused to hide, stepping into the world, ready to face whatever shadows remained. Because the truth wasn't just that he survived. The truth was that he chose to live. And that made him unstoppable. If this story pulled you in, don't leave just yet. Here on RiseVerse Stories, the wealth gets darker, the secrets get deeper, and the power plays get even more intense. Hit the like button to support the channel, subscribe so you never miss the next stories we bring to life, and turn on notifications to stay ahead of every new release. And if a moment in this story shocked you, melted your heart, or left you wanting more, drop a comment and tell me what grabbed you the most. Your engagement helps RiseVerse Stories grow and keep the stories coming. Thanks for watching, and get ready. Your next favorite story drops soon.